It was bright and shiny, big title, big money, the whole thing. I'd worked my whole career. I was so obsessed by hitting this title and this pay grade at this age. And I went after the opportunity. This didn't work. And I'm just like, I was like on the floor, not physically, but mentally, like, did I make this huge mistake? Was it me? What happened here? And you were like, oh, that's your mulligan. Everything is about relationships. Am I able to serve you the right way? Am I the right partner for you? And it's not necessarily just about, you, it's also about, am I the right fit? When I do make changes, I always try to explain why. I don't want to see the same thing over and over again. I have to ask myself, am I just editing it for pride and authorship? Is it that I want to have my stamp on it?
You have become somewhat of a well-known expert in the area of artificial intelligence.
I have seen, of course, clients and agency owner friends of mine who let go of people thinking, oh, we can just have AI do all of it. Hasn't always really worked out.
Hello, my name is Stuart MacMillan, and this is Keep Shining with Stuart MacMillan. Today, my guest is Kathleen Ross. She's known for creative leadership, AI and marketing, helping brands and people unlock their full potential, both with clarity and originality. Kathleen is a seasoned marketing executive. She's a fractional CMO, a speaker with 2 decades of experience building category-leading brands in beauty, wellness, and fashion. She's known for blending creative leadership with cutting-edge strategy, and she now helps companies and creators thrive in this new age of AI. But most importantly, without losing the human touch. She serves as the chair of the Fashion and Communications Advisory Board at St. Thomas University, and she sits on the Impact Circle Committee for Big Brothers Big Sisters Miami. I had the opportunity to work closely with Kathleen, both as in a company that we were in, and then in a support of our Lighthouse Collective. An amazing human, an amazing individual, and I can't wait to talk with her with you.
Keep shining, be a light. You were made to be a lighthouse, shine bright. Keep shining, be a light.
Welcome, Kathleen. We have kind of a long history together, which is pretty spectacular. Having had the opportunity to work together, we think a lot alike. But you've had some really interesting changes in your life, particularly over the last year or two, and I want to talk a little bit about them, particularly as it pertains to leadership. So, one of the things that you and I have both had to do is we've had to lead by influence versus leading by telling someone, do this or else. So how in your new role, because in your old role as a CMO, you had employees, so you sort of told them what to do. In your new role as a more of a contract CMO and a consultant, you have to lead by influence. Talk to me a little bit about how you're able to do that.
Well, and I would almost argue that you always need to lead by influence.
Absolutely.
Because as you have taught me, and is so true in my career, is everything is about relationships. That's not just, one way, right? We're not only talking about only make relationships with those who are above you and below you. We're talking side to side. So it's both vertical and horizontal relationships when we're talking about an organization.
Or as John Maxwell calls it, 360 leadership, right?
Exactly. 360 leadership. Yes, we're going to steal that. So if I'm thinking about even earlier in my career, having to lead by influence, lead teams that I wasn't 100% even managing back then, or even before I was offered promotions or stepping into leadership, I had to build relationships and lead by influence for those who didn't officially report to me. So in my new role, it's the same. And I think that it goes back to, I always am trying to make sure that people are included, understood, heard, empathetic. So it's somewhat my nature, but I do find that if you have stronger relationships and you water those relationships and you go and you grow those relationships, it's going to be a lot easier when you need to work together and accomplish a goal. And it's not always so straightforward,
Right.
And I've tried to never be the leader who's always like, you have to do this. And
Mhm.
Although there's a time for it to be
Yeah.
straightforward, but
Mhm.
it's just not my style. So it has been a little bit of a transition, because when you go from being an in-house department head to being a fractional or being a consultant or even some of my agency services, you're not necessarily in the day to day. So it takes for me a little bit more patience, I think, and understanding and pause to maybe not get frustrated because
Mhm. Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
so used to say like, no, I know this is the way. I know that this is
Yeah.
what's gonna take, but you're also navigating that you're not the sole decision maker, that you're not the one responsible for the P&L at the end of the day in some of these cases. So it's it takes a lot of patience, I think, and a lot of navigating relationships been my experience throughout my entire career, and especially now being a fractional CMO.
It's interesting. I hadn't thought about it until you started talking, but as you know, I lean into a lot of John Maxwell's stuff. Now, when he talks about the 5 levels of leadership, the first level is by rank, right? So I'm your boss essentially. So you do what I say. The second one is by productivity. So I'm pretty good at what I do. So you should listen to what I say. You don't have the first one. You sort of have the second one when you're leading via influence. But the third one, and I just thought about this as a consultant because I've done a little bit of that over the last 2 years. The third level is that relational. I'm here to serve you, right? And as I was thinking about how when you go into, a client, when they're not getting it, maybe you invoke that, which is, hey, I want to help you succeed. I want to make you look good. Maybe that's not the right words, but as I was sitting here, that might be a cool thing to do as a consultant. Hey, you know what? I think this is going to make you look good. I think, I'm in this for you. This is going to help you succeed. This is going to make life easier for you. If we started to use words that were like more about how do I help you,
Right.
then I'm building relationship as opposed to task. This is the best way to get this done. I don't know. What do you think?
It is a little hard because as someone, I care so deeply about my clients. I care so deeply about the work that I do. Otherwise, I wouldn't do it. So sometimes I get a little intense, a little passionate. And so being a consultant, again, you're kind of a little bit like inside, outside, inside, outside. And I always try to approach it from an inside mentality because I want them to know I feel like I'm in it with them and I take the responsibility like that. But it is that more of a guidance and more of a suggestion. And so I always tried to say, this is what I think would be great, or this is how I'd like to help, or this is what I think would do good based on my experience. But ultimately, especially like at the level that I'm advising at, it's the CEO's decision.
Right.
It's usually like me and the CEO and a few other executives for my smaller clients. And then, I'm specifically working directly with one senior executive in my role. So my job is only to make them look good and for them to accomplish their goals. So it takes a little bit of a dance.
So let's jump to something interesting. So you talk to a CEO, you give them the best advice you can based on your experience, etc., and they say no to that advice. How do you deal with that? I mean, we sort of talked about how you deal with it with the client. How do you deal with that personally? Because I know that's been a challenge for me over time. When they say, no, we're going to go this way, how do you deal with them? How do you continue to deal with them as a client? And how do you pick yourself up because it's so disappointing?
It really is. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about creative people, especially, but
Yeah.
I think that creative people who are really tied to their work and their work is their life's work, it's even harder. It's something I'm still constantly mastering, right? It's
Mhm,
still a
mhm, mhm.
practice. And sometimes I try to remind myself either they have a vision that I just don't see yet. And sometimes throughout my entire career, there's been times where I have thought so passionately, this isn't going to work, this isn't going to work, or this isn't the right way. And somehow it magically does. And sometimes that iteration and that conflict and that friction, like you've taught me about black hat, white hat, sometimes that really does lead to something that I just didn't see. So I always try to leave a little bit of room to be surprised and not always be so righteous and right that my way is the only way. So I try to remind myself that, because sometimes I get it is frustrating because you really care so much, and really comes back to that. It's like, I care so much. I want this to be successful. That's why I'm getting passionate about this. And then sometimes I just have to say, like, yeah, like, not my circus,
Draw on your inner Elsa and just say, let it go, right?
Yeah. And then if it is really becoming a challenge where it's just like, I'm not able to serve them, or my advice is not what they're looking for, or they're really looking for somebody who's just going to execute and not really be an advisor, and they don't value that, then ultimately we come to this point where it's a decision is if we're the best suited to work for each other. Am I the best person to support you? And that's the harder decision. And you don't make that decision right away. That's something that needs to be further down the line to say, am I able to serve you the right way? Am I the right partner for you? And it's not necessarily just about, you. It's also about, am I the right fit?
Right. And you have to figure out how to do that in a amicable, like, kind of, hey, I love the approach. Maybe I'm just not the right partner for you. And I actually had a couple of those over the last 2 years. The other thing I would say is, this is one of my axioms, but a half an idea is usually twice as bad, not half as good. Right? So as consultants, they'll go, okay, here's the plan, and they'll go, oh, I'll do this and this, but I'm not going to do that. And I know you've probably seen it too. Invariably, if you don't do this isn't going to work, right?
For sure. Yeah. Like the half-baked idea. I mean, half-baked cookies are still good, but half-baked other things are not so good, let me tell you.
Well, I always say, like, if the plan is to swim across Lake Ontario, swimming halfway across Lake Ontario means you drown, right? So it's not that great. It's interesting, and I had to come to the conclusion, same as you have, I'm sure, to say, hey, you know what? These are the ideas, and if you don't think they're great ideas, these are the we can work together, but after a time. At what point do you make that decision, make that call?
It's not a specific time frame. It's not like, oh, okay, at this exactly at 60 days, I'm going to be able to decide. It's not really that. I think it comes over a series of conversations, a series of time together. And if I'm finding that over a period of time, everything that I'm suggesting is not fitting with their vision, and that I'm not able to actually contribute, that's not value to them, and it's not value to me. And so that's when I really start to say, like, we need to start having these conversations.
So talk to me a little bit about when you're engaging in those preliminary conversations, when you're doing the little dance to go, are we right for each other? What kinds of things should people be looking out for so they don't invest, a month, 2 months, 3 months in something that isn't going to work? And I think the same holds true, by the way, for looking for a new job. So those of you who are out there going, should I work for this company? In Kathleen's case, should I engage with this company? I think those discussions are kind of similar. So tell me how you do that.
Yes, I always advise when I'm talking about careers, which is something that I speak a lot about, is they're not the only one interviewing you. You're interviewing them as well. And I always look for leadership. I've been taught, and I've heard, of course, through John Maxwell, that everything rises and falls in leadership. And that's really what I'm trying to get to the bottom of is this person the type of leader that I'm going to be inspired by, that I'm going to be able to advise, right? Are they advisable? Are they flexible? Are they open? Or am I going to just learn so much that maybe it doesn't matter as much? I've certainly worked for leaders like that too, that it's like, okay, all right, they got something going that I'm going to learn from. Here we go. Yeah. So really looking for that, like their leadership qualities, because their character, their values, that is so much more important than the work. And that's what I advise all of the people that I talk about careers as well as clients is this a person that I'm going to want to work for? Is so much more important than the work. And then over the time of the relationship, it's kind of just a check-in and back on those things, because that's what really matters.
Interesting. Now, I've worked with you for a period of time, and so this would be a question that would be more from your career as a CMO or as a leader and employed where you have employees, and it just popped in my head because oftentimes, so let's take a step back because you know me. I like to write, right? So I like to write. I'm reasonably good at it. And
I would say
so,
exceptional. I would say
oh, well, I
exceptional.
appreciate that. But what happens is when something comes to me in my head, I go, I could write this better. I'm
Mm,
sure in your job as a creative, people that work for you bring you work to edit or take a peek at or whatever. And in your mind, you go, I could probably do this better. There's a point, a balance at which you go, is is the incremental benefit I'm going to get from changing this enough to offset the discouragement I might give my employee? I know that this
yes.
is something you've thought about. So how do you determine how that works?
Well, you are also balancing, is what I'm going to provide that business critical when you're in
Yes,
an
right.
organization?
Is it gonna,
So
yeah,
is it really going to move the needle? Is me changing the color 2 points? Is me changing that word? Is that really critical? And is it critical for the business need, or is it a critical lesson that I need to teach or share because I'm seeing it ongoing? And it's really like, hey, if I change this, if I and explain why I changed it, is it going to make that person better at their job? Is it going to make the outcome better? Then it's always worth it, pretty much. And I like to give feedback. I've been in creative roles. I mean, that's a big part of my job, and I do get very, very intense about changes. I try not to change for the sake of changing, though, and
right,
that's
right,
where I'm trying to draw the line. And when I do make changes, I always try to explain why. Not
right.
only because I want them to know I'm not just being nitpicky, but I don't want to see the same thing over and over again. So they're growing, I'm growing at the same time. And again, I have to ask myself, am I just editing it for pride and authorship? Is it that I want to have my stamp on it?
Great
Or
question to ask.
is it that it's really going to make the work better, or this person needs this feedback because it's
Because it's a little bit
imperative to the
subjective,
work?
right? It's subjective.
Very
Yeah.
subjective. Sometimes I have a running joke with a few of my friends that it's like, I have eyes, thus I am a creative director. I have eyes, thus I'm great at marketing. And it's incredibly subjective. So I try to come from a background of reason when I'm providing edits and feedback to someone.
The downside, I think it's worth talking about the fact that the damage that can be done to an employee or to a department if you're consistently whatever work they bring you, you go, no, I want to do it this way, or no, we should change this, or no, we should change that. I think in my experience, I'd like to hear yours. In my experience, often that thwarts their creativity. So they get to the point where they go, oh, why bother? He's just going to change it anyway. Have you
Yeah,
had that happen?
for sure. It does depend on the approach, though. If the employee is open to feedback, and
Yeah.
you're not just changing to change,
Hmm.
you have a purpose behind it. It's going to be a lot easier. Now, you do have to sometimes, I guess Elsa's been a theme today, let it go,
Yeah, yeah.
because it's just not worth it. But then you also have to say, like, is this person rising to the occasion? Am I seeing the improvement that I need? Or am I just being too picky for the wrong reasons? I think I'm grateful that when it comes to working with creative people, I found that balance, and if it's not work again, then it's just like, if it's not working, it's just not going to work out.
Right,
But
right.
I try to give every chance along the way, and then focus on what matters most.
Yeah. It's interesting because, in my opinion, a lot of leadership is asking questions, not just of the people you're leading, but asking questions of yourself, right? Like being true to yourself and really being honest with yourself. And I love what you've said it 2 or 3 times through this topic. And that is, am I doing this for pride? Am I doing this, really being honest with yourself? Am I doing this for authorship? Or is it genuinely gonna, like you said, move the needle? And so taking the time to step back to ask yourself some questions is always wise, in my opinion.
Mhm.
So let's jump to looking back at your career. And I have another axiom. I have a whole bunch of them, as you probably know. Um, but one of them is, if you're going to regret something you did.
Mm.
Don't regret something you didn't do. And so I want to talk about, I don't want to talk about regret, but I want to talk about, in your career, I know that you've taken a lot of risks. What's a risk that you're glad you took that maybe didn't work out, but you're still glad you took it?
There's so many. I think
Okay.
early in my career, I started a business while I was in college. Ultimately, it was called Global Fashion Agency. We were going to take over the world. It was PR, marketing, graphic design, everything. And that didn't work out, right? I didn't make a lot of money doing that initially. And I had to close it and go into corporate. I was kind of doing both
Mm-hmm.
for a while.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm glad I did that because it taught me so much about event production and ended up giving me an opportunity to be an event producer and event marketing lead for a magazine. I was really unsure about going into the direct selling industry. That was one thing that I was like, and I wouldn't say that it necessarily didn't work out, but it was something that I was like, this is a risk for me. I remember calling my dad and saying, should I do this? I don't know about this whole thing. Is it a scam? What's the deal? And my dad said, no, it's not. You're really, you're gonna learn something new. It's just something to add to your breadth of business understanding and your experience. And so I'm glad I took that risk. I started recently in the past 3 years that I've been consulting. I had another project called Style Your Career. I really wanted to do a lot of events and career education. I'm still doing that as a speaker, but I'm not doing it in the form that it started out. So I could say like that's a huge risk that quote unquote didn't really work out. So I think taking risk and taking the path less traveled has been my entire career. And so
Mm-hmm.
I'm continuing to do that
That's great.
now,
That's great. Yeah, even today.
even today.
That's great, actually. And it's funny because, Wayne Gretzky always said, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right? And as I look at successful people in my life, most of them have had way more failures, than the average person. And the outside, and this is I think why we don't take risks, because the outside loves to play on people's failures. Well, you failed at this, you failed at that, but in fact, they failed because they tried. And as long
Yeah.
as you have a few wins, if you keep failing and you don't have any wins, then maybe you have some judgment issues.
Right. Well, and it brings me back probably to one of the biggest ones is I called you on this one because I was so distraught. I went to go take this really big opportunity. It was bright and shiny, big title, big money, the whole thing. I'd worked my whole career. I was so obsessed by hitting this title and this pay grade at this age. And I went after the opportunity. There were some flags but I just wanted it so bad. And I remember calling you a little bit in and just saying like, this didn't work. And I'm just like, I was like on the floor, not physically, but mentally, like
Yeah.
just so distraught that did I make this huge mistake? Was it me? What happened here? And you were like, oh, that's your mulligan. So I think you need to tell people what the mulligan is, because that really like helped me in this deep, dire moment that I had and when I called you.
Yeah, what's funny, if you've ever played golf, if you play with people that are, reasonable, they'll give you a mulligan, which means, you know what, that shot doesn't count. Like, that's your mulligan. You don't have to count that shot. And I believe that everybody has one or two career mulligans. I had them, and I had them for the exact same reason as you did. And that's why when it was a great title, and I was only, in my 30s, and I got to be a vice president, and I thought, well, that's pretty cool, in your early 30s to be a vice president of a huge global company. And it was disaster, monumental disaster. So when you called me, and you had made the decision for the exact same reasons, a little more money, great title, ignored that's the other thing. Ignored the red flags, right? You just kind of push through them. And that's a little bit in my book, actually. I talk about that a little bit about, you know, being patient enough to not ignore the red flags. But yeah, when you called, it was just like, oh, there's her career mulligan. And you might have another one. Who knows? You know, it sometimes happens. So
Yeah. Well, thank you for your guidance in that moment. I needed it so much. And I think every advisor that I called in that moment had some version of their career mulligan. And so I came to the conclusion that anyone who's really successful has had some failures. And so that was part of my learning. It didn't make it hurt any less, but I think it
No.
did validate in the moment that there was something bigger for me next, and that it was okay that it didn't work out.
Right. And I think it's important that we remember that every organization, every individual will have setbacks, right? Everybody. And you know, I in one of the companies that I helped to start, I remember saying to them, you know, it's not going to go like this all the time. There will be ups and downs. We're going to have setbacks. And for companies and individuals, the how we handle the setback, right? It determines our success. So what do you do when your business, what do you do when your career has a mulligan, has a hit? You know, what do you do if you get let go? Not everybody gets let go because they're incompetent. There are, candidly, you know, there are 100 other reasons. What do you do when that happens? You know, how do you respond to that? You were super resilient after your mulligan and came back better than ever, right?
Yeah.
A lot of companies, especially in the space that I work in, I see, you know, they have their setback. They're not anticipating it, and they don't respond in the right way. They do crazy things, or they don't have enough money saved up for that, you know, for that setback. So I always say a setback should be a setup. So so let's change tracks a little bit, because over the past, I would say, year, you have become somewhat of a well-known expert in the area of artificial intelligence. Candidly, I almost get tired of seeing everybody's talking about AI this, AI that. I use it regularly myself, but talk to me a little bit about how did that become kind of your bailiwick? How did you move into that and become an expert in AI? It's sort of, it's creative and marketing, but
Right.
you know, it's kind of it's a little shift. Talk to me
It
about the
is a
shift.
shift. Well, the neat thing is, being a graphic designer by trade, I've always been head into all of our digital programs. And creative folks and writing, marketing is, in my opinion, one of the most affected and earliest affected roles and departments in with the emergence of AI. Now, it already is so widespread, and certainly it is the topic on everyone's tongue. But I was a very early adopter, like one of the first, probably 100,000, few 100,000 folks on the LLM and ChatGPT. I started using it and already starting lecturing at colleges about it in early 2023. So it's been something that's just gotten popularity so quick because the technology has been so accessible, and it's changing so frequently. So I feel like it is incredibly, it's hard to even describe how big I think the AI revolution is. I think it's underhyped. I think it is not overhyped, and because it's improving so quickly. So I'm incredibly passionate about it, but I like to take a people lens. So I like to think about AI as a team sport when it comes to organizations. I like to think of it as an amplifier, as a partner, as a co-pilot, not a replacement. Have seen, of course, clients and agency owner friends of mine who let go of people thinking, oh, we can just have AI do all of it. Hasn't always really worked out. I've seen some of them have to hire back or have to get more creative with it. I can't say that the work is necessarily spectacular without great, thoughtful people running the technology, but it's here and it's going to continue to expand. So I'm like, you either got to get on the train or you're going to get left at the station, kind of thing. You know, I always try to remind people of the invention of the printing press when it comes to marketing and creative. So calligraphers were the lay of the land. That was the way that we could communicate. Are there calligraphers now? Yes, there are. They're far and few between. But when the printing press came out, did it replace all calligraphers? Well, people had to learn how to communicate differently. And now they could communicate at scale with incredible speed. And it was a major shift. So we're going to see that, 10x now. I mean, 1000x now. So I'm incredibly passionate. I really want to make sure that women are a big part of the conversation. I really want to make sure that
explain that.
Yeah. So in a lot of technical advances, not always women are seated at the table. Not always different diverse individuals are at the table at those critical moments. And AI is bias. AI is based on the data that it's provided. So there's biases within our culture that is going to be reflected in the technology, but also the primary users are actually training how the AI responds. What does a good image of a woman look like? And so when I started lecturing and speaking on AI, all of the image creations were of women that looked a specific way. And it was because of the feedback loop of the people using the technology. So I want to make sure that everyone has access to AI. I really want to make sure that we can amplify it across the board for all people. And I want to make sure that we're having lots of different voices using the technology and at the table when it comes to being inside companies, but also being users of the technology.
Yeah, I think voices at the table, not just though in using the technology, but in helping to develop the technology.
Yes.
Candidly, probably more important, right?
Yes, of course,
If
of
you
course.
truly believe, and I do, AI, the second word is intelligence, which means thinking. And I truly believe men and women think differently. Like, put aside cultural thinking, the way we think in America versus the way they think in the Philippines, but men and women think differently. And so it's important if people are starting to rely on artificial intelligence, that it's a blended intelligence, right? And so
Yeah.
how do you do that? So how do you stay involved in the development, not just the usage?
Well, in my role, I'm advising companies in their implementation of AI. I think that it's exciting to see a lot of women in these companies in different roles. One of the biggest speakers on AI is woman, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Her name's Allie
Yeah.
Miller, and hope to be on stages
I
with
was
her
going
at
to say,
some
and
point.
now Kathleen Ross. Yeah.
Yes. So I'm excited to see that. And I think just bringing awareness to it is the first piece. And it's gotten better. I mean, the technology space hasn't always been a very diverse group when it comes to gender inclusion, but
No.
I've seen it getting better. And just speaking about it, I mean, also, even if you look at the tech conferences, when I started speaking, I was at Hampton's Tech Week, and there was a women's specific technology panel, which is great, but it's like women should be on every panel. We don't need like a little special corner for us. Like we should just be part of the fabric. Like I don't need to have a whole, there are issues that we need to talk about that are specific to women, but
that's
also
almost problematic in and of itself. That there's a separate, Yeah.
But honestly, it was one of the only times that, not specifically at that conference, but it's gotten a lot better. It's gotten a lot better, but because of conversations like this, like I have this conversation a lot.
That's crazy.
But there's a right way to use AI and there's a wrong way to use AI. And we're going to have a lot of.
I kind of want to jump into that a bit because, you're a creative. I guess to a certain extent I am as well. And I looked at AI and went, holy, I'm a speaker, I'm a writer, more of a speaker than a writer. And then I see people, speeches that are written by AI and I go, I'm going to be out of a job. It doesn't matter that I speak or write well anymore. And what I started to learn was that authenticity, I could see, like, if someone's posting something on social media and you go, that doesn't sound like them, then you could tell that it was written by AI. In my career, there have been two individuals that spoke me, that would write and it sounded like me. right? One of them that we worked with, Colin McCormick, just
Incredible.
yeah, incredible writer, but he wrote me. So
Yeah.
and so I think that there's still, and I'm looking for confirmation or explanation. I think there's still an opportunity for the human touch because there's a real danger with AI that we come across as inauthentic.
Mm-hmm.
And especially in our space, the space that I'm in, direct selling, authenticity, well, I think it's important everywhere, but in our space, it's become super important that you come across as authentic. So talk to me a little
Yeah.
bit about how you handle that.
So it's become even more widespread. I'd say like early in the adoption curve, I could write things with AI, and I don't think many people knew that it was written with AI. And I've developed a way to train AI, which I'll tell you about. But I also have seen now with the wider spread adoption, people are recognizing the patterns, whether it's the
Yeah.
M dash, whether it's the redundant parallelisms, or you have an SAT level of vocabulary. I'm constantly saying like, what was that word? Let me write it down. Let me look it up when I talk to you. But most people don't have that level of vocabulary or interest in grammar. So you're kind of like, really? Did you use cataclysmic in that? Like, no, you didn't. Are you delving into anything? Like, not
Yeah,
you
yeah,
specifically, but
yeah,
like, no,
yeah.
that person probably wasn't delving into something. So
No.
there's become these kind of trigger words and patterns that people are recognizing. And there is a little bit of this, oh, that looks like it was written by AI, that I'm going to dismiss it. It's a micro moment that someone makes this decision. So
Yes.
being authentic with AI is super important. I want to talk about the concept of taste, because
Okay.
as AI becomes more and more widespread, it's going to be even harder to detect as soon as people understand how to use it better. The differentiator is taste is originality. Since
Mhm.
everyone has access to the same exact thing, I say we have a movie studio in our pocket now. The
Mhm.
only difference is originality. So I like to do a few different things when it comes to being able to get my authentic voice with AI. The first is I always like to draft and speak my idea first before asking AI to go
Mm,
out and
mm,
create ideas. You can use AI as a thought partner or generate a few ideas, but making sure that the drafter is going to make the end result so much better. So I like to
mhm.
draft, I like to let AI do all the editing, and then I like to do the refining at the end. The next thing that I like to do is you can train AI on your voice by giving it examples. I actually have an entire focus method, which talks about focusing on a role,
Mhm.
outlining a
Mhm.
goal, giving context, using examples, and setting boundaries. And when you give AI and train AI on your voice based on this is something that I wrote that I'm proud of, these are the best examples of my writing, it will understand your unique patterns, your unique language, and be able to provide something that's better than just having AI generically write something for you. So, understanding how to use the technology is going to maintain that authenticity in your voice if you know how to use it and provide examples and iterate with the technology. The other thing is like
That's
don't ever just give it like
yes.
don't ever just like say make this and then post it. You have to edit. So we're talking
Mm,
about
mm,
taste,
mm.
examples, training it on yourself on your own voice, and then editing at the end and refining.
That's interesting. The image that just popped in my head and is a gilet. So in art, right? In art, there's the print, but then the artist goes in and kind of adds and that's infinitely more valuable. A gilet, it's not an original, but it's still a piece of the artist because the artist has gone in and hand added elements to the print. So I
Yeah,
that
at least hand
that's what
sign it, right? At
yeah,
least they need to hand sign it.
that's what popped into my head actually.
Oh, I love
Yeah,
that.
yeah, it's interesting though because I think it's in the editing. It's in the editing that we actually like I've used it. I haven't used it anywhere near as much as you have, but I do find myself going, no, no, no. Like, how about a little bit of this? Or no, how about you focus on that? Or and I know, for example, when I write or speak, I use you guys know usually 3 points and usually they're
Three C's.
a
Yeah.
alliteration and all that kind of stuff, and So if I plug that into AI, then it'll know to write like I would speak, right? Is that
Yeah,
how it works?
I would upload approved speeches of yours, presentations, excerpts of your writing. And if you can even identify this, it's all about being a great communicator. If you can identify what are the things that make you uniquely you, like there is vocabulary, there are frameworks in your body of work already, even though we haven't gotten the book yet, we will soon. But there are things that I know, like that's a stewardism. So you need to
Mhm.
train AI on your stewardisms. And if
Interesting.
you're a great writer, you don't have to use AI just because everyone else is. We're going
Right.
to see this huge counterculture. It's already
Mhm.
happening, especially young folks, like even some of my brothers, they're computer and
They're
engineers,
like
and they're like,
they're resisting
they
AI.
hate it. I'm like, you're a computer engineer. What do you mean you hate it? But they're
Yeah.
awesome musicians and creators. And
Yeah.
so there is going to be return to handcraft. There are going to be companies that take a AI free policy or as much as they
Yeah.
possibly can, which I don't even
Yeah.
know what that will mean anymore.
Yeah.
But if you want to write, if you want to knit, if you want to paint, do that. Like
Yeah.
keep
Yeah.
doing it. Keep it
Well, it's
alive.
funny. It's funny because I write things in the morning and it's cathartic for me. Do you know what I mean? Just getting my thoughts out on paper and maybe posting. Sometimes I post them on social media. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes they're just in a little journal I keep over here. But the process of writing is cathartic, and we don't want to lose that, right? Because I don't think it'd be near as cathartic for me to type in ChatGPT, tell me about this, right?
Right.
It's nowhere near as, write something up on me on the thought I'm just having right now.
And
So
we're still prompting AI for now.
yeah, yeah.
Um, for
Oh,
now,
oh, you
but
said for now. So
yeah, for now.
what do you think's gonna
Well,
happen?
we're getting the big conversation right now is around agents. Agents
Mm,
are the difference between an agent and an assistant or agent and automation is that agents can actually make decisions and achieve a goal. So you give an agent a
mhm,
goal and it can go through and make its own decisions, reason, refine, edit, search, and then it will come back with you with the end result. And we will be looking more and more at what they call multi-agent frameworks, where there's multiple agents communicating with each other, and agents may prompt other agents. So, I mean, we're going to get a little matrixy out there, but I still think that the initial, hey, go do this thing is still coming from us. We are still the ones prompting and utilizing the technology to bring our ideas to life. So make sure that you're using it in that way and not just letting AI tell you what your
yeah.
ideas are.
It's funny. I don't know if Deb and I told you, but we had the opportunity to be in a very small group of, I think, three or four couples and talk to the former CEO of Intel. And
Oh, yes.
he was talking to us about how he saw AI being used, and he just gave this incredible thing where the equivalent of your Aura ring detected something wrong in your sleep, and by the time you woke up, it had ordered a prescription for you, had gone to had set up a doctor's appointment for you that day because it was super urgent, and had gone in your calendar and canceled the other appointment because it had decided this was more important than it was phenomenal. So I think we have to not be afraid of it and try to embrace it and figure out how can it enhance our world, not just oh my gosh, it's Orwellian or something like that. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I get excited about it. I choose to be excited about it.
no,
You
no,
could be,
I love your excitement, and I love that you're now having the opportunity to speak to organizations about it. So I'm going to continue to watch you grow, and the story gets the cool thing about you speaking on this is that it continues it's dynamic and it continues to change. So you get to adapt and go, hey, I found something new, and people are going to lean into you to find
every
those new
day.
things. That's
Every
awesome.
day there's something new. It's overwhelming, honestly. So,
Okay,
in a good way, in a good way.
so I have a question, a final question for you. Um, who in your life has been a major light, and how did they impact you?
Well, I have had so many people be amazing lights in my life. I think starting out with my parents, I'm
Hmm.
incredibly
Hmm.
blessed to have two incredibly supportive parents. who continue to be a huge light in my life. I've made so many crazy decisions to quit jobs and take
Mm-hmm.
sabbaticals and do things very differently than I think what a traditional path has been. And they've continued to be a light and support me through all of my challenges and different phases of life. So they are, I would be remiss to not mention them.
Mm-hmm.
And then early in my career, I worked for an amazing woman named Lindsay Woodruff, and she was a huge part of my foundational leadership experience
Mm-hmm.
because I saw someone for the first time, a woman who I said, wow, she leads so naturally. And she just,
Mm-hmm.
her lead, the way that she led was just who she was. And with grace and kindness and empathy and passion and creativity. And she also had really great boundaries, which I still haven't figured out. But she really was this person who I would just say later in my career, like, wow, what would this person have done? And how can I be more myself the way that she showed up like herself and her leadership style? And there were a lot of challenging things that we went through together when we worked together. And she just handled them with such practicality and grace. And she was also a collector of people in the best way possible. That sounds a little weird, but she
No, I know.
really
Understand.
knew how to pick people and to put together a team. And that was the first time that I really, really saw that curation of minds and talent. And that was a huge, huge part of my leadership journey. My husband is a huge light in my life. I can't even, there are times when I'm like, what am I doing?
He's super chill, eh?
So different than me. I'm like off the walls, a million different places at once. He's very grounded. And of course I learned so much of how to lead, how to walk through challenges, stewardisms on the daily that come to my mind. So very grateful for your mentorship. I feel very privileged to have had so many lights in my life, and I think it's also a huge responsibility then myself to shine that through all of the amazing people who've shown on me.
I love that you talk about the obligation, and I truly believe that. I think we have an obligation to others to take whatever it is that we've received and give it back out, not just financially, but motivationally and spiritually and academically. And I always say that people who go to school just so they can appear smarter than other people are narcissists, right? But if you go to school and you learn so that you can pass that on and make someone else's life better, then it's so much more fulfilling and so much more significant. So we have a little tradition on Keep Shining, which is somebody has given me a question. The last person has given me a question that you're going to answer.
Okay.
And then I'm going to ask you for a question. So their question is, how do you lead something you didn't start?
Oh, well, for me, it's been most of my experience. Although I've been an entrepreneur, I've also been in the corporate world. So almost every company that I've gone into, I've been leading a team that I didn't start. Sometimes I've been super lucky and inherited an amazing team that literally almost everyone stayed, which was such a blessing. And other times you're walking into a situation and you're like, okay, it's a redo. But the big thing is to come in. It's so tempting to just want to start swinging right away and putting your stamp on everything and getting it all your way. But you really have to understand and be quiet, and something very hard for me, and to take in what's happening and to assess the situation and say, what is the foundation here? What you have to do this assessment period before you go and just make it your own. So once you've understood, hey, is this good soup? Can I add to the soup? Can I add some spices here? Or is the soup bad? I got to throw it out. That's a whole other different conversation. Sometimes if you have bad soup, you can't just add more salt. You got to start from scratch. But most of the time you're saying, what can I add? How can I take this vision forward? It's going to have your stamp on it anyway, whether you try or not. You want to try to ease into things and understand the culture, because if you're just fighting and providing that friction right up front, everyone's back is going to be against the wall, because they're trying to
Right.
figure out, like, what are you about? Are you going to make my
Yeah.
life easier? Are you going to
Yeah.
help me? Am I going to grow? Is this going to be a nightmare? Is what they're skeptical. So you have to know that going in, and really let people understand that you're there to make the business better. Sometimes there's going to be hard decisions, but you're adding the spice, you're bringing the vision forward. You don't have to be the person who created it.
Right. That's cool. Very cool. So what's your question that you're going to leave behind for my next interviewee?
Okay. So I want to know, what do you do to continually fuel your light? When you feel like your light is dim, what are the things that you do to fuel your own light so that you can continue to shine for others?
All right. That's a great question. I can't wait to, I actually already know who's going to have to answer that. So it's going to be interesting. Thank you for your time today. Obviously, we're very close, and it's been a absolute light. You've been a light in my life, and I'm just so grateful that our paths crossed and God chose to bring us into each other's lives. So thank you,
Thank
Kathleen. Thanks for
you.
your day. All right.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
All right. We got to say it, though.
Well, we should say it together.
Yes. Okay.
Keep shining
and be a light.
and be a light.
Keep shining, be a light.